car flipped over and someone's trapped inside. Simone was already out of her car, running toward the wreckage in her bright blue sundress and white sneakers. "Ma'am, please stay in your vehicle until emergency services arrive. I can't just watch him die." Simone ended the call and shoved the phone into her pocket. The Mercedes was completely upside down, its windows shattered and roof caved in. She could hear groaning from inside. Getting down on her knees, Simone peered through the broken passenger window. A man in an expensive navy suit hung upside down, held by his seatbelt. Blood trickled from a cut on his forehead, and his eyes were closed. He was probably in his early 30s with dark hair and strong features. Even unconscious and bleeding, something about him seemed important, powerful. "Sir? Can you hear me?" Simone called out. His eyes opened slowly, unfocused and confused. "What? Where am I?" "You've been in an accident. The paramedics are coming, but I need to make sure you're okay until they get here." He tried to move but winced in pain. "My chest. I can't." "Don't try to move. You might have broken ribs." Simone had learned basic first aid from her grandmother, who worked as a hospital volunteer for 40 years. "What's your name?" "Adrian," he said weakly. "Adrian Montgomery." Simone didn't recognize the name, but she could tell from his clothes and car that he had money. Lots of it. The watch on his wrist probably cost more than she made in 6 months at her small bakery. "I'm Simone. I'm going to stay right here with you until help arrives, okay?" Adrian's eyes found hers through the wreckage. Despite his pain, she saw something gentle in them, something that didn't match the expensive suit or luxury car. "You stopped," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Of course I stopped. Everyone else they just drove past." Simone felt her heart break a little. No one deserved to be left alone in a moment like this, no matter how much money they had or didn't have. The sound of sirens grew louder in the distance. Simone squeezed Adrian's hand through the broken window. "They're almost here. You're going to be fine." "Why did you stop?" Adrian asked, his eyes never leaving her face. "Because it was the right thing to do." Something shifted in Adrian's expression. Even upside down and bleeding, Simone could see that her simple answer had affected him deeply. The fire truck arrived first, followed by 2 ambulances and 3 police cars. Simone moved back as the paramedics took over, but Adrian kept looking for her through the crowd of first responders. "Ma'am, are you injured?" A young paramedic approached her. "No, I just pulled over to help." "You did good. Most people don't stop for accidents like this." Simone watched as they carefully extracted Adrian from the wreckage and loaded him onto a stretcher. As they wheeled him toward the ambulance, he turned his head and found her in the crowd. "Wait," he called out weakly. The paramedic stopped, and Adrian reached into his jacket pocket with obvious pain. He pulled out a business card and held it toward Simone. "Please? I need to thank you properly." Simone took the card. It was heavy, expensive cardstock with simple black lettering, "Adrian Montgomery, Montgomery Enterprises." "You don't need to thank me," she said. "Yes, I do." His voice was getting stronger despite his injuries. "What you did today, please let me repay your kindness." The paramedics were getting impatient, and Simone could see that Adrian needed medical attention immediately. "Just focus on getting better," she said softly. As the ambulance drove away, Simone stood on the highway shoulder, holding Adrian's business card and wondering why a simple act of human decency had seemed to mean so much to him. She didn't know that Adrian Montgomery was one of the most powerful and feared business owners in the state. She didn't know that his name appeared in newspaper headlines about corporate takeovers and business failures. She didn't know that most people crossed the street when they saw him coming. All she knew was that she had helped a fellow human being in need, and somehow, that simple act was about to change both their lives forever. What would you have done if you saw someone trapped and bleeding with everyone else just driving past? Would you have had the courage to stop and help, even when it meant getting involved in a stranger's crisis? Share your thoughts in the comments below and subscribe to see how this chance encounter transforms 2 very different lives. 3 days later, Simone was elbow deep in cookie dough when the bell above her bakery door chimed. She looked up from the industrial mixer, flour dusting her green apron, and froze. Adrian Montgomery stood in her doorway, looking nothing like the broken man she'd pulled from the wreckage. He wore a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, his dark hair styled impeccably, and only a small bandage on his forehead showed any sign of the accident. But his eyes were the same gentle brown she remembered. "Simone." He stepped inside and she noticed he moved carefully, probably still sore from his injuries. "Adrian, you're okay." She wiped her hands on her apron, suddenly aware of how she must look covered in flour and sugar. Thanks to you. He glanced around the small bakery, taking in the mismatched tables, the hand-painted menu board, and the display case that had seen better days. This is your place? Sweet Dreams Bakery. It's not much, but it's mine. Simone felt heat rise in her cheeks. Her little shop probably looked like a closet compared to wherever someone like Adrian normally spent his time. It's perfect, Adrian said, and she could tell he meant it. It smells like heaven in here. A timer went off in the kitchen, and Simone rushed to pull a tray of chocolate chip cookies from the oven. When she returned, Adrian was examining the photos on her wall. Pictures of birthday cakes, wedding desserts, and happy customers covered nearly every inch of space. You did all of these? Every single one. Baking has been my passion since I was 12 years old. Simone set the hot cookies on a cooling rack. My grandmother taught me her recipes, and I've been adding my own touches ever since. Adrian picked up one of the warm cookies and took a bite. His eyes closed in appreciation. This is incredible. Thank you. Would you like some coffee to go with that? Actually, I came here to talk to you. Adrian pulled out a chair at one of her small tables. May I sit? I'm still a little shaky on my feet. Of course. Simone poured 2 cups of coffee and joined him, still wearing her flour-dusted apron. I've been thinking about what you did for me, Adrian began. You saved my life, Simone. The doctors said if I'd been trapped much longer, internal bleeding could have killed me. Anyone would have done the same thing. No, they wouldn't have. I was conscious enough to see car after car drive past before you stopped. Adrian leaned forward. I want to repay you somehow. Simone shook her head quickly. You don't owe me anything. I'm just glad you're okay. Please, let me help you with something. Anything. Really, Adrian, that's not necessary. Adrian looked around the bakery again, and Simone saw him notice the water stain on the ceiling, the worn linoleum floor, and the display case that sometimes didn't stay closed properly. What if I helped you fix up this place? Just as a way to say thank you. Simone's first instinct was to refuse. She'd been managing on her own for 3 years since opening the bakery, scraping by and making do with what she had. Pride had kept her going when things got tough. But looking at Adrian's earnest face, she remembered something her grandmother used to say, sometimes accepting help is just as important as giving it, baby girl. Don't let pride keep you from blessing someone else. Simone hesitated. I know we just met, Adrian said gently. But you trusted me enough to risk your safety helping me. Can't you trust me enough to let me return the favor? Something in his voice made Simone's resistance crumble. This wasn't charity or pity. This was gratitude from someone who genuinely wanted to give back. The ceiling has been leaking for 6 months, she admitted. And the display case needs new seals. The floor probably should be replaced, and the front window has a crack that gets bigger every time a truck drives by. Adrian smiled, and it transformed his entire face. Consider it done. But I can't let you pay for all that. It would be too expensive. Simone, 3 days ago I was hanging upside down in a car, bleeding and thinking I might die. Money can't buy what you gave me that day. Peace of mind, hope, human kindness. Let me do this. Simone felt tears prick her eyes. She'd worked so hard for so long, always struggling to keep the bakery afloat. The idea of finally being able to fix everything that was broken felt like a dream. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything. Then, yes. Thank you. I accept your help and I'm grateful for it. Adrian's smile widened. Good. I'll have contractors here first thing Monday morning. Contractors? Plural? Simone, when Adrian Montgomery fixes something, he fixes it right. She laughed, feeling lighter than she had in months. I don't even know what you do for a living. Something flickered across Adrian's face, so quick she almost missed it. I'm in business development. I help companies grow and succeed. That sounds important. It keeps me busy. Adrian finished his cookie and stood up carefully. I should let you get back to work. But Simone. Yes. Thank you. For stopping, for caring, for accepting my help. You have no idea how much it means to me. After Adrian left, Simone stood in her little bakery, looking at it with new eyes. Soon the ceiling would be fixed, the floors would shine, and the display case would work properly. But more than that, she had met someone who seemed to understand kindness in a way that was rare. She picked up the business card Adrian had given her at the accident scene, studying the simple lettering. Montgomery Enterprises. She made a mental note to look it up online later, curious about what kind of business development Adrian did. For now, though, she had cookies to bake and dreams to nurture. And for the first time in months, those dreams felt possible. The contractors arrived at 7 a.m. sharp on Monday morning, And Simone quickly realized that when Adrian said he fixed things right, he meant it. There were 8 workers total. Electricians, plumbers, flooring specialists, and painters. They moved through her bakery like a well-organized army. "Ma'am, we'll need you to clear out the display area," said the foreman, a kind older man named Pete. "Mr. Montgomery wants everything done in 3 days so you can reopen Thursday." 3 days. Simone had expected the work to take weeks. "Mr. Montgomery pays us well to work fast and do good work." By noon, Sweet Dreams Bakery was completely transformed. The old linoleum had been ripped up to reveal beautiful hardwood floors underneath. The water-stained ceiling tiles were gone, and new track lighting was being installed. Even the walls were getting fresh paint in a warm cream color that made the space look twice as big. Simone was standing in her kitchen watching the controlled chaos when Adrian appeared in the doorway. He wore dark jeans and a forest green button-down shirt, looking more relaxed than she'd seen him. "How's the progress?" he asked. "It's incredible. I can't believe this is the same place." Adrian stepped carefully around a painter's ladder to join her. "Pete's crew is the best in the city. They renovated my office building last year." "Your office building? How big is your company?" Again that flicker across his face. "Big enough to keep me busy. Are you okay with the color choices?" "I know I should have asked you first." Simone looked out at the cream walls and rich brown trim. "It's perfect. It feels warm but professional." "Good. I was hoping you'd like it." Adrian rolled up his sleeves, wincing slightly as he moved his left arm. "Are you still hurting from the accident?" "Just a little sore. Bruised ribs take time to heal." He noticed her concerned expression. "I'm fine really. The doctor cleared me for light activity." "Like supervising bakery renovations?" "Like helping a friend who saved my life." The word friend made Simone's heart skip a little. She'd been wondering how to classify their relationship, and knowing Adrian thought of her as a friend felt right. "Can I ask you something?" Simone said as they watched Pete install new display case lighting. "Anything. Why is this so important to you? I mean, you've already thanked me." Most people would have sent flowers or a gift card. Adrian was quiet for a long moment, studying the workers bustling around her bakery. "I grew up in foster care," he said finally. 12 different homes between ages 6 and 18. You learn pretty quickly that most people only help if there's something in it for them. Simone felt her breath catch. She'd never expected such personal honesty from someone she'd known less than a week. "What you did on that highway," Adrian continued, "stopping to help a complete stranger with no expectation of reward. I'd forgotten people like you existed." "There are lots of people like me, Adrian." "Not in my world there aren't." Something in his tone made Simone study his face more carefully. Despite his expensive clothes and obvious success, she saw loneliness in his eyes. A kind of isolation that money couldn't fix. "Well, you're in my world now," she said softly. "And in my world, people help each other because it's right, not because they want something in return." Adrian looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "I'm starting to remember what that feels like." Over the next 3 days, Adrian spent most of his time at the bakery. He claimed he needed to oversee the renovation, but Simone noticed he pitched in wherever he could despite his healing ribs. He helped move equipment, tested the new ovens, and even learned to operate the upgraded coffee machine. On Wednesday evening, after the workers had gone home, Simone and Adrian stood in the middle of her transformed bakery. The new floors gleamed under soft lighting, the display cases sparkled, and every surface had been cleaned and polished to perfection. "I don't know how to thank you," Simone said, turning slowly to take it all in. "You already have. By letting me be part of bringing this place back to life. You did more than fix my bakery, Adrian. You gave me hope." "You gave me something too," Adrian said quietly. "What's that?" "A reason to remember why success is supposed to matter." Simone didn't fully understand what he meant, but she could see the sincerity in his eyes. Whatever Adrian's life had been like before the accident, something fundamental had shifted for both of them. "The grand reopening is tomorrow," Simone said. "Will you be here?" "I wouldn't miss it." "Good. I'm making a special batch of those chocolate chip cookies you liked. Consider it payment for all your hard work." Adrian laughed, a rich sound that filled the bright space. "Best payment I've ever received." As they locked up the bakery and walked to their cars, Simone felt a contentment she hadn't experienced in years. Her business was secure, her dreams were alive again, and she'd found an unexpected friend in the last person she ever would have imagined. She still didn't know much about Adrian's business or his life outside these walls, but she was beginning to understand the man himself. Generous, hardworking, and surprisingly humble despite his obvious wealth. What she didn't know was that Adrian Montgomery's name struck fear into business owners across 3 states, or that his reputation for ruthless corporate takeovers had made him more enemies than friends. All she knew was that he had kind eyes, gentle hands, and a heart that responded to simple human kindness with overwhelming gratitude. And that was enough for now. The grand reopening of Sweet Dreams Bakery was everything Simone had hoped for. Customers lined up outside before she even turned the sign to open, drawn by the beautiful new storefront and the enticing aroma of fresh pastries. By noon, she'd sold more baked goods than she usually did in a week. Adrian arrived just before lunch rush, carrying a massive bouquet of sunflowers and wearing a navy blue suit that made his brown eyes look almost golden. "For the lady of the hour," he said, presenting the flowers with a smile that made Simone's heart flutter. "They're beautiful. Thank you." She found a vase and placed the sunflowers on the counter where everyone could see them. "The place looks amazing with customers in it," Adrian said, watching the steady stream of people admiring the renovated space. "I can't believe the response. Mrs. Patterson ordered 6 dozen cookies for her church social, and the Johnson family wants me to cater their anniversary party next month. You deserve all the success, Simone. Your talent was just waiting for the right showcase." Their conversation was interrupted when Simone's best friend, Kiana Washington, burst through the door with her usual dramatic flair. "Girl, this place is stunning," Kiana announced, her red heels clicking on the new hardwood floors. "You didn't tell me you were doing a complete renovation." "Kiana, meet Adrian Montgomery." "Adrian, this is my best friend Kiana." Kiana stopped mid-stride, her smile freezing on her face. "Adrian Montgomery? As in Montgomery Enterprises Adrian Montgomery? You know my company?" Adrian extended his hand politely, but Kiana didn't take it. "Everyone in the business community knows Montgomery Enterprises." Kiana's voice had gone cold. "Simone, can I talk to you in the kitchen? Privately?" Simone looked between her best friend and Adrian, confused by the sudden tension. "Of course. Adrian, excuse us for just a minute." In the kitchen, Kiana grabbed Simone's arm. "Do you know who that man is?" "His name is Adrian Montgomery. He helped me renovate the bakery." "Simone, Adrian Montgomery is the most ruthless businessman in the state. He buys struggling companies and destroys them. He's put dozens of family businesses out of operation." "That can't be right. Adrian helps companies grow and succeed. He told me so himself." "Is that what he told you?" Kiana pulled out her phone and did a quick search. "Look at this." She showed Simone a news article from 2 months ago. "Montgomery Enterprises acquires local restaurant chain, closes half of locations." Below that was another headline, "Family hardware store shuttered after Montgomery buyout." Simone stared at the screen, her heart sinking. There was Adrian's photo, looking stern and corporate in a business suit. And this one, Kiana scrolled to another article. "Montgomery takeover leaves 200 employees jobless." "There has to be an explanation," Simone said weakly. "Honey, the explanation is that Adrian Montgomery is a corporate shark. He targets struggling businesses, buys them cheap, and either closes them down or strips them for parts." Kiana's expression softened with concern. "What did you think all this renovation money came from?" Simone felt sick. She thought about Adrian's expensive clothes, his luxury car, his willingness to spend thousands on her bakery without blinking. All of it made from destroying other people's dreams. "Maybe he's changed," she said, but even to herself she sounded desperate. "Men like Adrian Montgomery don't change, baby. They just find new targets." Kiana squeezed Simone's shoulder. "I'm sorry. I know you liked him." Simone walked back to the main area on unsteady legs. Adrian was helping Pete, the contractor foreman, adjust one of the new light fixtures. He looked up when he saw her, and his smile faded immediately. "What's wrong?" "I think you should go," Simone said quietly. "What? Why?" "Just, please go." Adrian looked from Simone to Kiana, who was watching him with obvious suspicion. Understanding dawned on his face. "She told you about my business, didn't she?" "You lied to me." Simone's voice was barely above a whisper. "You said you help companies grow and succeed." "I do help them. By shuttering them? By putting people out of work?" "It's not that simple, Simone. Isn't it?" All the hurt and confusion of the last few minutes crystallized into anger. "You used blood money to renovate my bakery. You bought my friendship with profits from destroying other people's lives." Adrian stepped toward her, his face pale. "That's not what happened." "Please leave," Simone said, not trusting herself to say more without crying. For a moment, Adrian looked like he might argue. Then his shoulders sagged in defeat. "I'll go," he said quietly. "But Simone, there are two sides to every story. I hope someday you'll let me tell you mine." After Adrian left, Simone threw herself into serving customers and cleaning up from the busy day. But she couldn't stop thinking about the articles Kiana had shown her, or the way Adrian's face had crumpled when she asked him to leave. That evening, alone in her beautiful renovated bakery, Simone sat at one of the small tables and cried. She'd lost more than a friend today. She'd lost the man who had made her believe in unexpected kindness and second chances. The sunflowers Adrian had brought still sat on the counter, their bright faces now seeming to mock her naive trust. She'd been so quick to believe in fairy tales and happy endings that she'd ignored all the obvious signs. Adrian Montgomery wasn't a gentle man who understood kindness. He was exactly what everyone said he was. A corporate predator who destroyed dreams for profit. And she had let him into her heart. Word traveled fast in Simone's neighborhood. By Thursday morning, everyone knew that Adrian Montgomery, the feared businessman, had renovated Sweet Dreams Bakery. And everyone had an opinion about it. "Simone, baby, you can't trust that man," said Mrs. Coleman, who had been coming to the bakery every morning for 2 years. "He closed down my cousin's auto shop last year. Bought it right out from under him and turned it into a parking lot. He's using you to make himself look good," added Mr. Torres, selecting his usual blueberry muffin. "Rich men like that don't do favors without expecting something in return." By lunchtime, Simone felt like she was drowning in warnings and advice. Every customer had a story about someone Adrian Montgomery had hurt, some business he'd destroyed, some family he'd left struggling. Her phone buzzed constantly with text messages from friends and family who had seen the renovated bakery on social media. "Girl, please tell me you didn't get mixed up with Adrian Montgomery. Her cousin Jasmine. Call me ASAP. We need to talk about this Montgomery situation. Her Aunt Patricia. Whatever he promised you, it's not worth it. Her neighbor Todd." The most painful message came from her grandmother, the woman who had taught her to bake and raised her to see the good in people. "Simone, honey, I'm worried about you. That man has a reputation for a reason. Come see me tonight so we can talk." By 3 o'clock, Simone couldn't take any more. She flipped the sign to closed, and sat alone in her gleaming bakery, surrounded by the evidence of Adrian's generosity and the weight of everyone's disapproval. Her phone rang and she saw Kiana's name on the screen. "How are you holding up?" Kiana asked without preamble. "Everyone thinks I'm an idiot." "No one thinks you're an idiot. People are just worried about you. Based on newspaper articles and gossip. Based on facts, Simone. Adrian Montgomery has a documented history of destroying small businesses. But what if there's more to it? What if the newspapers don't tell the whole story?" Kiana was quiet for a moment. "Are you seriously considering forgiving him?" "I don't know what I'm considering." Simone rubbed her temples, feeling a headache building. "I just keep thinking about the man I got to know over the past week. He was kind, gentle, hardworking. He rolled up his sleeves and helped with the renovation even though his ribs were still healing. Honey, sociopaths can be charming. That's how they get people to trust them. Adrian isn't a sociopath." "How can you be so sure?" Simone couldn't answer that question. She just knew, somewhere deep in her heart, that the man who had sat in her kitchen eating warm cookies and talking about his childhood in foster care wasn't capable of the cold calculation everyone attributed to him. "I need some air," she told Kiana. "I'll call you later." Simone locked up the bakery and drove to the park where she used to play as a child. It was quiet there, with just a few families enjoying the late afternoon sunshine. She sat on a bench and tried to sort through her confused emotions. She believed in kindness, hope, and love. Those values had guided every major decision in her life. But now everyone she cared about was telling her to abandon those principles when it came to Adrian Montgomery. Her phone buzzed with another text, this one from an unknown number. "This is Adrian. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I need you to know that everything I told you was true. I have never lied to you and I never will. If you ever want to hear my side of the story, I'll be waiting." Simone stared at the message for a long time. Part of her wanted to delete it and pretend she'd never met Adrian Montgomery. That would be the safe choice, the one everyone expected her to make. But another part of her, the part that had pulled over to help a stranger in a car accident, whispered that maybe safe wasn't always right. That evening, Simone drove to her grandmother's house, a small blue cottage with a garden full of roses and jasmine. Grandma Ruby was waiting on the porch with sweet tea and homemade pound cake. "There's my beautiful grandbaby," Ruby said, pulling Simone into a hug that smelled like vanilla and love. They sat on the porch swing watching fireflies dance in the gathering dusk. For a while neither of them spoke. "Tell me about this man," Ruby said finally. Simone described meeting Adrian at the accident, his genuine gratitude, the way he'd worked alongside the contractors despite his injuries. She talked about his loneliness, his stories about foster care, and the gentleness she'd seen in his eyes. "But everyone says he's ruthless," Simone finished. "They have newspaper articles and documented proof." Ruby was quiet for a long time, her weathered hands folded in her lap. "You know, baby girl, your grandfather had a reputation too. People said he was the meanest man in 3 counties. Said he'd run you off his property with a shotgun if you looked at him wrong. But Grandpa was the sweetest man I ever knew." "That's right. But it took me 2 years to see past what everyone else said about him to who he really was underneath." Ruby looked at Simone with wise, loving eyes. "Sometimes reputations are earned. Sometimes they're just stories people tell because it's easier than trying to understand the truth." "So what do I do?" "You follow your heart, child. It's never steered you wrong before." As Simone drove home, she thought about her grandmother's words. Her heart had led her to pull over on Highway 95 that day. It had led her to accept Adrian's help despite her pride. And now it was telling her that there was more to Adrian Montgomery's story than newspaper headlines and community gossip. The question was whether she was brave enough to find out what that story was. Simone stared at Adrian's text message for 3 days before finally responding. On Sunday evening she typed back, "Riverside Park, tomorrow at 6 p.m. You can tell me your side." His response came immediately, "Thank you." Monday evening found Simone sitting on the same park bench where she tried to sort through her feelings, watching Adrian walk toward her across the grass. He wore simple khakis and a white button-down shirt, and she could see the tension in his shoulders from 50 feet away. "Thank you for agreeing to see me," he said, sitting carefully on the opposite end of the bench. "Everyone thinks I'm making a mistake. Maybe you are." Adrian's honesty surprised her. "I wouldn't blame you if you decided to walk away and never see me again. But you asked me to hear your side of the story. Because you deserve the truth. Whether you believe it or not is up to you." Simone studied his profile as he stared across the park. "The article said you've closed dozens of businesses." "That's true. And put hundreds of people out of work." "Also true." Simone felt her heart sink. "Then what's left to explain?" Adrian turned to face her, and she saw pain in his brown eyes. "The part about why I do it." He was quiet for a moment, gathering his thoughts. 3 years ago I got a call from a man named George Hendricks. He owned a small restaurant chain, 5 locations that had been in his family for 30 years. He was 3 months behind on payments to suppliers, 6 months behind on payroll and facing bankruptcy. Adrian's voice was steady, but Simone could hear the emotion underneath. George had 2 choices, declare bankruptcy and lose everything or sell to me. If he declared bankruptcy, his employees would get nothing. His suppliers would get nothing. His family would lose their life savings. "So you bought his restaurants?" "I bought them for twice what they were worth on paper. Enough to pay off his debts, cover back payroll and leave George with money to start over." Simone frowned. "But the article said you closed half the locations." "I closed 3 restaurants that were losing money every month. But I kept 2 open, invested in new equipment and marketing, and helped them become profitable again." Adrian met her eyes. "Those 2 locations now employ more people than all 5 restaurants did when George owned them." "What happened to George?" "He used the money to open a food truck business. He's happier now, making a good living without the stress of managing failing properties." Simone felt something shift inside her chest. "But the newspaper made it sound like you destroyed his business." "It makes a better story that way. Ruthless corporate raider destroys local restaurant, gets more clicks than businessman helps struggling owner avoid bankruptcy." "What about the hardware store?" "Mrs. Coleman said you closed her cousin's shop and turned it into a parking lot." Adrian nodded grimly. "Frank Coleman. Another good man in a bad situation. His store had been losing money for 8 years. He was about to lose his house trying to keep it afloat." "So you bought it?" "I bought it for enough money to pay off Frank's business loans and personal debts. Yes, I turned it into a parking lot because there was no way to make a hardware store profitable in that location. But Frank used the money to pay off his mortgage and invest in his son's plumbing business, which is now thriving." Simone stared at Adrian, trying to process what he was telling her. "Why don't you tell people the real story?" "Because the people I help asked me not to." Adrian's voice was soft. "Think about it, Simone. How would you feel if everyone knew your business was failing? If the whole community knew you couldn't make your loan payments or pay your employees. The truth of that hit Simone hard. She would be mortified if everyone knew Sweet Dreams Bakery had been struggling. George, Frank, all the others, they wanted to maintain their dignity. They wanted people to think they'd gotten a good deal, not that they'd needed rescuing. So you let people think you're the villain. It's easier than explaining the truth. And it doesn't matter what people think of me as long as the people I help can hold their heads high. Adrian stood up and walked to the edge of the pond, his hands in his pockets. I know how it looks, Simone. I know what people say about me. Most days I can live with that. Most days. But meeting you, having someone look at me and see something good? I'd forgotten what that felt like. Simone joined him by the water, her mind racing. Everything Adrian had told her made sense. It explained his loneliness, his surprise at her kindness, his desperate gratitude for simple human decency. The day of the accident, she said quietly, you said you'd forgotten people like me existed. In my world, everyone wants something. Business deals, networking opportunities, social climbing. No one does anything without an angle. Adrian looked at her with eyes full of vulnerability. But you stopped to help a stranger with no expectation of reward. You accepted my gratitude with grace instead of suspicion. You made me remember why I got into business in the first place. Why did you get into business? To help people. I know that sounds naive coming from someone like me, but it's true. Adrian's voice was barely above a whisper. I spent my childhood feeling powerless, watching adults make decisions that destroyed families without caring about the consequences. I promised myself that when I grew up, I'd use whatever power I had to help instead of hurt. Simone felt tears prick her eyes. The man standing beside her wasn't the corporate shark everyone described. He was someone who had turned his childhood pain into a mission to help others, even at the cost of his own reputation. Why are you telling me this? She asked. Because you saved my life and I don't want you to think that life belongs to a monster. Adrian? I understand if you can't be associated with me. I know what it would cost you and your community. Simone thought about the past few days, the constant warnings and disapproval from everyone she cared about. Then she thought about the man she'd gotten to know over the past week, the one who had worked beside contractors with healing ribs and learned to operate her coffee machine just to help. I believe you, she said simply. Adrian's head snapped up in surprise. You do? The man I met at the accident scene, the one who spent 3 days helping renovate my bakery? That man is exactly who you say you are. Relief flooded Adrian's face, followed quickly by something that looked like hope. Does this mean you'll let me be your friend again? Simone smiled, feeling lighter than she had in days. I never stopped wanting to be your friend, Adrian. I just needed to understand who you really are. And now you do? Now I do. As they walked back to their cars, Simone felt like she was seeing everything with new eyes. The man beside her carried the weight of other people's secrets, sacrificing his own reputation to protect their dignity. He'd turned loneliness into purpose and criticism into compassion. And despite everything everyone said about him, Adrian Montgomery was exactly the kind of person she wanted in her life. Someone who understood that true strength came from lifting others up, even when no one would ever know you'd done it. The next morning, Simone arrived at Sweet Dreams Bakery to find 3 members of the Neighborhood Business Association waiting outside her door. Mrs. Elena Rodriguez, who owned the flower shop next door, stood with her arms crossed and a stern expression on her face. Simone, we need to talk, Elena said as soon as Simone got out of her car. Good morning to you too, Elena. Simone unlocked her door and gestured for the women to come inside. Coffee? This isn't a social call, said Patricia Wells, who ran the community newsletter. We're here about your association with Adrian Montgomery. Simone poured herself coffee and turned to face the 3 women. What about it? You can't seriously be planning to continue a relationship with that man, Elena said. He's poison to small businesses. I think there might be more to the story than what appears in newspapers. Stories don't pay bills, honey, added Carol Murphy from the hair salon. That man has destroyed more family businesses than anyone else in the state. Have you actually talked to the families whose businesses he bought? Simone asked quietly. The 3 women exchanged glances. What do you mean? Patricia asked. I mean, have you spoken directly to the people involved, or are you basing your opinions on newspaper articles? We don't need to talk to them, Elena said. The facts speak for themselves. Do they? Simone set down her coffee cup. Because I've learned that facts can be presented in ways that don't tell the whole truth. Carol stepped forward. Simone, we're trying to protect you. And protect our community. If people think we support Adrian Montgomery, We might lose customers? Revenue might drop? Simone felt anger building in her chest. So we should judge a man based on gossip and rumors because it's better for business. It's not gossip, Patricia protested. There are documented cases. Of what, exactly? Of him buying businesses? That's not illegal. Of him closing unprofitable locations? That's not immoral. Simone looked each woman in the eye. Or are you upset because he didn't let those businesses fail completely so you could feel better about your own moral superiority? That's not fair, Elena said. What's not fair is condemning someone without knowing all the facts. Simone moved toward the door. Adrian Montgomery saved my business when I was too proud to ask for help. He worked alongside contractors despite his injuries. He treated my friends and customers with respect and kindness. Simone, please think about what you're doing, Carol pleaded. I'm thinking about judging people by their actions toward me, not by their reputation among people who've never actually met them. The bell above the door chimed and Adrian walked in. He took in the tense scene immediately, his gaze moving from the three glaring women to Simone's flushed face. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I didn't realize you had company. I'll come back later. No, Simone said firmly. These ladies were just leaving. Elena looked from Simone to Adrian, her expression hard. This isn't over, Simone. The business association will be discussing your choices at our next meeting. After the three women left, Adrian stood awkwardly by the door. I shouldn't have come. I'm causing problems for you. They're causing problems for themselves by judging you without knowing you. Simone, maybe they're right. Maybe you should distance yourself from me. Is that what you want? I want what's best for you. And having Adrian Montgomery as a friend might not be what's best. Simone studied his face, seeing the pain he was trying to hide. Let me ask you something. If our situations were reversed, if I had a reputation that could damage your business, would you walk away from our friendship? That's different. How? Because you're... Adrian struggled for words. You're good. Pure. You deserve better than the complications I bring. Adrian Montgomery, you listen to me. Simone stepped closer, her voice firm but gentle. I'm not pure or perfect. I'm just a woman who tries to do right by the people in her life. And that includes standing by friends when other people try to tear them down. Even if it costs you customers? Even if it hurts your business? Especially then. Simone reached out and squeezed his hand. My grandmother always said that character is what you do when doing right is hard. Well, this is hard. And I'm choosing to do right. Adrian looked down at their joined hands, and Simone saw moisture in his eyes. I don't deserve your loyalty. That's not your decision to make. It's mine. The rest of the morning was awkward, with several regular customers making excuses to leave quickly when they saw Adrian helping behind the counter. But Simone noticed that just as many customers stayed, curious about the man who was learning to frost cupcakes with intense concentration. Around lunchtime, an older black gentleman Simone didn't recognize came into the bakery. He was well dressed but not flashy, with kind eyes and graying hair. Excuse me, he said, approaching the counter where Adrian was organizing supplies. Are you Adrian Montgomery? Adrian straightened, his expression guarded. Yes, I am. I'm Robert Hendricks. George Hendricks is my brother. Simone saw Adrian's entire demeanor change. His shoulders relaxed and something that looked like relief crossed his face. Mr. Hendricks, how is George doing? That's what I came to tell you. Robert smiled warmly. His food truck business is thriving. He's happier than I've seen him in years. I'm so glad to hear that. He wanted me to thank you again. What you did for our family, we'll never forget it. Adrian glanced at Simone, who was listening intently from behind the coffee machine. George saved his own family, Adrian said quietly. I just provided an alternative to bankruptcy. You provided dignity, Robert corrected. You let my brother walk away from a bad situation with his head held high and money in his pocket to start over. He pulled out his wallet and handed Adrian a photograph. That's George at his food truck last week. Look how happy he is. Simone came over to look at the picture. It showed a smiling man in his 50s standing proudly next to a gleaming food truck with George's Gourmet painted on the side. He looks wonderful, she said. He is wonderful. And it's thanks to this man here. Robert shook Adrian's hand warmly. I hope you know how many lives you've changed for the better, Mr. Montgomery. After Robert left, the bakery was quiet. Adrian sat at one of the small tables, still holding the photograph. That's why you do it, Simone said, joining him. That's why I do it. And you've never told anyone? Never defended yourself publicly? George asked me not to. He said people would think less of him if they knew he'd needed help. Adrian looked up at her. How could I take that away from him? Simone felt her heart swell with pride and admiration for this man who sacrificed his reputation to protect other people's dignity. Well, she said, settling into the chair across from him, I know the truth, and I'm proud to call you my friend. Even when it costs you customers? Customers come and go, Adrian. Friends like you are rare. As if to prove her point, the bell above the door chimed and 6 new customers walked in, drawn by the smell of fresh pastries and the warm atmosphere of kindness that filled Sweet Dreams Bakery. Sometimes standing strong meant standing alone. But sometimes, Simone realized, it meant finding someone worth standing with. Have you ever had to choose between popular opinion and what your heart told you was right? Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is stand by someone when the whole world is against them. What would you have done in Simone's place? Share your thoughts below and subscribe to see how love and truth triumph over fear and gossip. 2 weeks later, Simone was closing up the bakery when Adrian arrived with an expression she'd never seen before. He looked worried, almost frantic. We have a problem, he said without preamble. What kind of problem? Sit down. Simone felt her stomach drop. Adrian, you're scaring me. Miller's Hardware is going out of business. Mr. Miller's place on 5th Street? But that store has been there for 40 years. 53 years, actually. Started by Carl Miller's father. Adrian ran his hand through his hair. Carl called me this morning. He's 3 months behind on rent, can't pay his suppliers, and the bank is threatening foreclosure on his house. Simone understood immediately. He wants you to buy the business. He's desperate. If I don't buy it, he'll lose everything. His house, his retirement savings, everything. So buy it. Help him like you've helped others. Adrian's laugh was bitter. You don't understand. Miller's Hardware is where half this neighborhood shops. It's an institution. If I buy it and close it down, every person in a 5-mile radius will see it as proof that I destroy community businesses. But you'd be saving Mr. Miller from bankruptcy. No one will see it that way. They'll see Adrian Montgomery shutting down another beloved local business. Adrian slumped into a chair. And this time you'll be guilty by association. Simone felt the weight of what Adrian was telling her. Miller's Hardware was where she bought supplies for bakery repairs, where her neighbors got their keys made and their lawn mower blades sharpened. It was as much a part of the community as her bakery. What if you don't buy it? Carl loses his house. His wife needs expensive medication that insurance doesn't cover. Without money from selling the business, they'll be homeless within 6 months. Simone stared at Adrian, understanding the impossible position he was in. Save Carl Miller and be vilified by the community, or protect his reputation and let a good man lose everything. There has to be another way. I've been thinking about this for hours. There isn't. What if someone else bought it? No one else has the capital, and even if they did, the business isn't salvageable. The location is terrible for retail, the inventory is outdated, and online shopping has killed most of their customer base. Simone was quiet for a long moment, thinking. What would happen if the community knew the truth? About what you really do, about how you help people? Carl would be humiliated. He specifically asked me to keep the details private. But what if we could tell the truth without violating his privacy? Adrian looked at her with curiosity. What do you mean? What if there was a way to show people who you really are without revealing anyone's personal business? The next morning, Simone did something she'd never done before. She called Patricia Wells at the community newsletter and asked for a meeting. Patricia arrived at the bakery looking suspicious and defensive. If this is about Adrian Montgomery again, I don't want to hear it, Patricia said. It is and it isn't. Simone poured coffee and sat across from Patricia. I want to tell you a story. Simone, I don't have time for fairy tales. This isn't a fairy tale. It's about a man who changed my life. Simone told Patricia about the accident, about Adrian's gratitude, about the bakery renovation. She talked about getting to know Adrian as a person, about his loneliness and his genuine desire to help others. That's all very sweet, Patricia said when Simone finished. But it doesn't change his business practices. What if his business practices aren't what you think they are? What do you mean? What if I told you that every business Adrian Montgomery has ever bought was facing bankruptcy? That every owner who sold to him walked away with enough money to pay their debts and start over? Patricia frowned. That's not what the articles say. The articles only tell part of the story. They can't tell the whole truth because the people involved asked for privacy. You're saying Adrian Montgomery is some kind of secret hero? I'm saying he's a man who helps people keep their dignity when their businesses fail. Simone pulled out her phone and showed Patricia the photo Robert Hendricks had brought to the bakery. This is George Hendricks. Adrian bought his restaurant chain 2 years ago. George used the money to start a successful food truck business. Patricia studied the photo. He looks happy. He is happy. And he asked Adrian not to tell anyone he'd needed help. Why are you telling me this? Because there's another situation developing, and I think the community deserves to know the truth before they judge. Simone explained about Miller's Hardware, about Carl's desperate situation, and about Adrian's dilemma. He's going to buy the business, isn't he? Patricia asked. Yes. Because letting Carl lose his house isn't an option for Adrian. Even though everyone will hate him for it. Even though everyone will hate him for it. Patricia was quiet for a long time, staring into her coffee cup. You really believe he's a good man? I know he's a good man. And you're willing to risk your reputation to defend him? My reputation isn't worth more than the truth. 3 days later, Miller's Hardware closed its doors for the final time. Adrian completed the purchase that afternoon, and within hours, angry residents were gathering outside the empty store. Simone found Adrian sitting in his car across the street, watching the crowd with resignation. How bad is it? She asked, sliding into the passenger seat. Mrs. Rodriguez called me a vulture. Mr. Torres said I was a cancer on the community. Adrian's voice was flat. Pretty standard, actually. Adrian? I knew this would happen. I just hoped maybe this time would be different. It will be. Adrian looked at her with confusion, and Simone handed him a copy of that week's community newsletter. The front page headline read, The Truth About Adrian Montgomery. Patricia's article told the story of a man who specialized in helping failing businesses avoid bankruptcy, who paid owners above market value for properties that couldn't be saved, and who protected the dignity of people in their darkest financial moments. The article included interviews with 5 business owners Adrian had helped over the past 3 years, all of whom had agreed to go public with their stories. It explained how Adrian's seemingly ruthless takeovers were actually rescue missions that allowed proud business owners to walk away with their heads held high. How did you? Adrian started. Patricia Wells might be nosy, but she's also a good journalist. Once I gave her the Real story, she did her homework. Adrian read the article twice, his expression shifting from disbelief to something that looked like hope. They'll see this. Everyone will see this. Patricia's newsletter goes to every household in the neighborhood. As if summoned by their conversation, people began emerging from their houses with copies of the newsletter in their hands. Simone watched as the angry crowd outside Miller's Hardware started reading, their expressions changing from fury to confusion to understanding. Within an hour, someone had organized an impromptu gathering in the park across from the hardware store. Adrian and Simone walked over together, unsure of what they would find. Carl Miller stood at the center of a circle of neighbors, tears in his eyes. I want everyone to know, Carl said in a shaky voice, that Adrian Montgomery saved my family. When I called him, I was facing bankruptcy and homelessness. He paid me 3 times what my business was worth and did it quickly enough to save my house. Elena Rodriguez stepped forward, looking ashamed. Mr. Montgomery, I owe you an apology. We all do. You don't owe me anything, Adrian said quietly. You were protecting your community. That's exactly what you should do. But we were wrong about you, Mrs. Coleman said. And we were wrong to pressure Simone about your friendship. Adrian looked around at the faces of people who had feared and mistrusted him for years. I understand why you felt that way. My business practices look harsh from the outside. Why didn't you ever explain? Someone called out. Because the people I help asked me not to. Their privacy was more important than my reputation. The crowd was quiet, absorbing the weight of what Adrian had sacrificed to protect other people's dignity. Well, said Mr. Torres, stepping forward with his hand extended, I'd like to shake the hand of a man who puts kindness before reputation. One by one, the neighbors who had vilified Adrian came forward to apologize and thank him. By sunset, the man who had been seen as a threat to the community was being celebrated as its protector. As the crowd dispersed, Simone and Adrian walked slowly back toward their cars. I can't believe it, Adrian said. For 3 years I thought I'd have to live with being misunderstood forever. Sometimes the truth just needs the right messenger, Simone said. And sometimes it needs someone brave enough to stand by you when standing alone would be easier. Adrian stopped walking and turned to face her. Simone, I need to tell you something. What? I'm falling in love with you. The words hung in the air between them, simple and honest and completely unexpected. Adrian, I know it's complicated. I know my life isn't easy. But you've shown me what it feels like to be understood, to be cared for, to be worth defending. Adrian's voice was soft but sure. You've given me back my faith in human goodness. Simone looked into his eyes and saw everything she'd grown to love about this man. His gentleness, his integrity, his willingness to sacrifice for others. I'm falling in love with you too, she whispered. Adrian smiled, the first completely unguarded smile she'd ever seen from him. Really? Really? As he pulled her into his arms, Simone marveled at how much had changed since that day on Highway 95. She'd stopped to help a stranger and found her soulmate. She trusted her heart over popular opinion and discovered that sometimes, the most feared person is actually the most loving. And she'd learned that truth, like love, was worth fighting for. 6 months after the Miller's hardware revelation, Sweet Dreams Bakery had become more than just a neighborhood business. It was a symbol of second chances and the power of standing by your principles. Customers came not just for Simone's amazing pastries, but for the warm atmosphere she and Adrian had created together. Adrian had kept his promise to help local businesses, but now he did it openly. Montgomery Enterprises had transformed from a feared corporate entity into a respected community partner. The local newspaper ran a monthly column about Adrian's business rescue operations, always with the permission of the people involved. You're going to burn those muffins, Adrian said, sliding his arms around Simone's waist as she stood at the oven. I'm watching them, she laughed, leaning back against his chest. You're the one distracting me. I like distracting you. It was early morning, an hour before the bakery opened, and they had fallen into a comfortable routine. Adrian arrived at 6 a.m. every day, helping Simone with the morning prep while sharing coffee and quiet conversation. Mrs. Patterson called yesterday, Simone said, pulling the muffins from the oven. She wants to cater her golden anniversary party next month. 50 years of marriage. That's impressive. She said the secret is marrying your best friend. Adrian spun Simone around to face him, his hands resting on her waist. Smart woman. Over the past months, Simone had watched Adrian transform. The loneliness that had shadowed his eyes was gone, replaced by contentment and genuine happiness. He smiled more, laughed easier, and had developed friendships with several of their neighbors. I have news, Adrian said, his tone shifting to something more serious. Good news or bad news? Good news, I think. Great news, actually. Adrian's eyes sparkled with excitement. I found an investor for the community center project. Simone gasped. 4 months, the neighborhood association had been trying to raise funds to convert an abandoned building into a community center with meeting spaces, a small gymnasium and programming for local kids. They were still $200,000 short of their goal. Who's the investor? Me. Adrian, you can't fund the entire shortfall yourself. Why not? I have the money and the community needs the center. But people will think you're trying to buy their approval. Adrian cupped her face gently. Simone, I've learned that I can't control what people think. I can only control what I do. And what I want to do is help build something that will benefit everyone. The kids' after-school programs alone will change dozens of lives, Simone said softly. That's what I'm hoping for. The bell above the door chimed, and they looked up to see Elena Rodriguez entering with a steaming cup of coffee and a warm smile. Good morning, you two. Am I interrupting anything important? Just Adrian being his usual generous self, Simone said. Elena raised an eyebrow. What's he done now? He wants to fund the rest of the community center project. Elena's coffee cup stopped halfway to her lips. The whole shortfall? Adrian, that's the right thing to do, Adrian said simply. But it's so much money. Money I'm blessed to have and happy to share. Elena set down her coffee and hugged Adrian tightly. You know what? I'm not even surprised anymore. This is just who you are. As Elena left with her usual order of cinnamon rolls, Simone marveled at how completely Adrian had been accepted into their community. The man who had once been feared was now the first person people called when they needed help. Speaking of the community center, Adrian said, returning to his coffee, there's something else I wanted to discuss with you. What's that? I've been thinking about expanding my business model. Instead of just helping businesses that are already failing, what if I started investing in promising startups? Helping entrepreneurs get their ideas off the ground. Simone loved the excitement in Adrian's voice. That sounds wonderful. I want to focus on businesses that serve their communities. Bakeries, restaurants, service companies, things that create local jobs and build neighborhoods. You want to be a venture capitalist. I want to be what I've always been, just in reverse. Instead of saving businesses from failure, I want to help them avoid failure in the first place. That's brilliant, Adrian. I was hoping you'd think so because I want you to be my partner. Simone nearly dropped her coffee mug. What? You have an incredible business sense, Simone. Look what you've built here. You understand what it takes to run a successful community business, and you understand people in a way that I'm still learning. Adrian, I don't know anything about venture capital or corporate finance. But you know about heart, about building relationships, about creating something that matters to people. Those are the most important qualifications. Simone stared at him, overwhelmed by the possibilities he was laying out. Think about it, Adrian continued. We could help dozens of entrepreneurs achieve their dreams, create hundreds of jobs, build stronger communities. If you want to. Simone thought about her grandmother's words about following your heart, about her own journey from struggling bakery owner to successful businesswoman. She thought about Adrian's transformation from feared corporate raider to beloved community partner. I'll need to learn everything from scratch. I'll teach you everything I know. It would mean traveling, meeting with investors, spending time away from the bakery. We'll hire someone to manage the bakery when we're away. Mrs. Coleman's daughter just graduated from culinary school and needs a job. Simone realized that Adrian had thought through every practical concern, every obstacle that might keep her from saying yes. You really want to do this together? Simone, everything good in my life started the day I met you. I can't imagine building a future that doesn't include you in every part of it. The sincerity in his voice made her heart race. Are you asking me to be your business partner? I'm asking you to be my partner in everything. Adrian reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Simone's breath caught as he dropped to one knee right there in the middle of her bakery. Simone Carter, you saved my life in every way that matters. You showed me what love looks like, what community means, what it feels like to be understood and accepted exactly as I am. Adrian opened the box to reveal a simple, elegant diamond ring. Will you marry me? Tears streamed down Simone's face as she looked at this man who had become her best friend, her biggest supporter, and the love of her life. Yes, she whispered. Yes to everything. The business partnership, the marriage, the life we'll build together. Adrian slipped the ring onto her finger and stood to kiss her, both of them laughing and crying at the same time. I love you, Simone Carter. I love you too, Adrian Montgomery. As they held each other in the morning light streaming through the bakery windows, Simone thought about the journey that had brought them here. It had started with a simple act of kindness on a busy highway and had grown into something neither of them could have imagined. Love, she realized, wasn't just about finding the right person. It was about being willing to see the best in people, to stand by them when others wouldn't, and to build something beautiful together despite the obstacles. And as Adrian spun her around the bakery that had brought them together, Simone knew that their story was just beginning. 1 year later, Sweet Dreams Bakery was decorated with white roses and golden ribbons for the wedding ceremony that would unite two hearts and two dreams into one beautiful future. Simone stood in the small office behind the bakery, wearing her grandmother's pearl necklace and a flowing white dress that made her feel like a princess. Through the window, she could see guests filling the folding chairs Adrian had arranged in the bakery's main space. You look absolutely beautiful, baby girl, Grandma Ruby said, adjusting Simone's veil with gentle hands. I still can't believe this is really happening. What? Because the man everyone used to fear turned out to be the gentlest soul in the neighborhood. Simone laughed. Because a year ago I was struggling to keep this place afloat, and now I'm marrying my best friend and starting a new business that helps other people achieve their dreams. That's what happens when you follow your heart, child. Good things come to good people. A knock on the office door interrupted them, and Kiana peeked her head in. It's time, ladies. Adrian looks like he's about to pass out from nervousness. Simone took a deep breath and picked up her bouquet of sunflowers and white roses. As they walked toward the main bakery, she could hear Adrian's voice talking to someone. I know I don't deserve her, he was saying. But I promise you I'll spend every day trying to be worthy of her love. Son, you saved our family business, came Carl Miller's gruff voice. Far as I'm concerned, you deserve all the happiness in the world. Simone paused outside the door, her heart full of love for this man who still didn't fully understand how wonderful he was. The music started and Kiana and Ruby took their places. Then it was Simone's turn. She stepped into the bakery and saw Adrian waiting for her at the front, looking devastatingly handsome in his navy blue suit. But it was his expression that took her breath away. He looked at her like she was the answer to every prayer he'd ever whispered. The guests rose as she walked down the makeshift aisle between the tables where she'd served coffee and Adrian had learned to frost cupcakes. Elena Rodriguez dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. Mr. Torres gave her an encouraging nod. Mrs. Coleman smiled widely, her husband's arm around her shoulders. But Simone only had eyes for Adrian, who was watching her approach with wonder and joy written across his face. When she reached him, he took her hands in his and whispered, "You're so beautiful. You clean up pretty well yourself," she whispered back. The ceremony was simple and heartfelt, conducted by Pastor Williams from the neighborhood church. They had written their own vows, and when it was Adrian's turn, his voice was strong and sure. "Simone, a year ago I was a man who had forgotten what kindness looked like. I had money, success, and everything I thought I wanted, but I was empty inside. Then you stopped on Highway 95 and changed everything." He squeezed her hands gently. "You showed me that the most important things in life can't be bought or sold. Love, community, friendship, the simple joy of helping someone else succeed. You taught me that being understood is worth more than being feared, and that building people up is more satisfying than tearing them down." Adrian's voice grew softer but no less certain. "I promise to love you with the same courage you showed when you stood by me against everyone's advice. I promise to support your dreams the way you've supported mine. And I promise to spend every day proving that the woman who saved a stranger on the highway made the best decision of both our lives." There wasn't a dry eye in the bakery. When it was Simone's turn, she looked into Adrian's brown eyes and saw their entire future stretched out before them. "Adrian, when I pulled over that day, I thought I was just helping someone in trouble. I had no idea I was meeting the man who would teach me what it means to love completely and be loved in return." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "You've shown me that strength isn't about being tough or feared. Real strength is being vulnerable enough to let people see your heart, brave enough to do what's right when it's difficult, and generous enough to put other people's happiness before your own reputation." Simone felt tears threatening but continued. "I promise to stand by you always the way you've stood by everyone who needed help. I promise to see you the way God sees you, not the way the world might judge you. And I promise to build a life with you that honors the love that brought us together." Pastor Williams pronounced them husband and wife, and when Adrian kissed her, the entire bakery erupted in cheers and applause. At the reception that followed, held in the renovated community center that Adrian had helped fund, the couple was surrounded by people whose lives they had touched. George Hendricks and his wife drove in from 2 hours away to attend. Frank Coleman brought his son, whose plumbing business was thriving thanks to Adrian's investment advice. Speech. Someone called out as dinner wound down. Adrian stood, pulling Simone up beside him. "I'm not much of a public speaker," he began, "but there are some things that need to be said." He looked around the room at the faces of people who had once feared him and now considered him family. 2 years ago, most of you knew my name as someone to avoid. I was the businessman who bought struggling companies, the corporate shark who destroyed local businesses." Adrian's voice was steady but emotional. Those stories were true, but they weren't complete. He squeezed Simone's hand. "It took meeting this incredible woman to understand that being misunderstood wasn't noble, it was just lonely. With her encouragement and your forgiveness, I've learned that doing good in secret is less important than building trust and community." Adrian turned to face Simone. "But most importantly, I've learned that love isn't just about finding someone who accepts you as you are. It's about becoming the person you were meant to be because someone believed in you enough to stand by you when standing alone would have been easier." The room was completely quiet. "So thank you, all of you, for giving me a second chance. Thank you for letting me be part of this community. And thank you for celebrating the love story that started with an accident and became the best thing that ever happened to either of us." As guests raised their glasses in a toast, Simone leaned close to Adrian. "Any regrets?" she asked softly. "Only one," he said, his eyes twinkling. "What's that?" "I wish that accident had happened sooner." 3 months later, Montgomery Carter Ventures opened its doors with Simone as Chief Community Relations Officer and Adrian as Chief Executive Officer. Their first investment was in a young woman who wanted to open an art therapy studio for children. Their second was in a veteran who had developed an innovative recycling program. Within 6 months, they had helped launch 12 new businesses, all focused on serving their communities and creating local jobs. Sweet Dreams Bakery continued to thrive under the management of Sarah Coleman, Carl Miller's niece, who brought fresh ideas and boundless energy to the business. And every morning, Adrian and Simone started their day the same way they had for the past year, sharing coffee and quiet conversation, planning their future, and marveling at how a simple act of kindness had transformed both their lives. The man everyone had feared had become the man everyone trusted. The woman who had saved a stranger had found her soulmate. And together they had built a love story that proved kindness, hope, and love could overcome any obstacle, change any heart, and create any future they dared to dream. As Simone always told people who asked about their unusual beginning, sometimes the best things in life start when you're brave enough to pull over and help someone in need. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, that someone turns out to be the person you were meant to spend forever with.